every laugh, every smile, every hug, every kiss, every touch, every person in my life that I care about and love. But wait, maybe I'm getting too emotional. That's exactly what they say you ain't supposed to do. Suppress your feelings, never talk about your pain. Can't appreciate the sun without acknowledging it rains, right? That's right. So this a moment of clarity. And make sure you always protect your energy. You stay focused and your life gon' be lit. And you are now rocking with Celeste, the therapist. Let's go.
Hi y'all. Today's Friday. Today's May 1st. And if you've never been in here before, you're watching me on the replay. My name is Celeste. I'm a therapist from Boston. And I come on to talk about things and to help people kind of shift the way they think. Since the quarantine started, I've been coming on live for the last 6 weeks. And I've been bringing different people on to kind of talk about how life has changed and ways that, we've had to pivot the things that are going on. And so that's been going well. I've been podcasting since 2018, but I decided to bring it on video. And so you guys get to see somebody new 5 days a week, which is amazing. So before I bring on my special guest really quick, I wanted to put up this crisis text line. So one thing that I've been doing every day since the show started was showing you guys this. So 741-741 is a free text line. You will be connected to a crisis counselor. So whether you're feeling anxious, down, any kind of emotion, it doesn't matter. You can reach out. One thing I like about this free line is that you can text. I know a lot of times people have a hard time talking on the phone. So this is something that people can do. And for people, because I know people are in different parts of the world, I found this nonprofit organization, Hope for Today, and it was created because the person had lost 9 people to suicide. So he created this platform where you can put in the country that you're from, and you can find mental health services that are in the area that you are from. So that's something that is available for people. So I'm going to bring on my special guest. Her name is Rachael Rollins. I'm going to add her to the stream. Hello.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I am awesome.
Can you introduce yourself to my audience?
Sure. My name is Rachael Rollins. I'm the district attorney of Suffolk County. Suffolk County is Boston, Chelsea, Winthrop, and Revere. And I'm the elected chief law enforcement officer for all 4 of those locations. I'm the first woman to ever be elected to my position in Suffolk County in the, I think, 220 years the office has been in existence. And I'm the first woman of color in the history of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to ever be elected a DA.
Congrats. That's amazing. So in order to do that, you had to go to law school, right?
You did, yes. So the requirements of being DA, and that's a great question, Celeste. You must be a lawyer, you must be alive, and you must be a resident of Suffolk County. So literally the day before the election, you have to be a resident of Suffolk County. There were some people who have lived here. I was born in Boston, but raised in Cambridge, and Cambridge is not part of Suffolk County. It's Middlesex County. But when I won, and I had to win my primary in September of 2018, and I beat 4 other people for that. And then I had to win my general against a Republican candidate in November. And because I'm a mom of young children, I didn't move officially until I had won both, right? Because there are people in the race that didn't have children, were very wealthy, and could, have different residences. That was not my reality. So November 6th, I won my general election with 82% of the vote, which I'm really proud of. And then I had to move, and I chose to move to Roxbury because I wanted to make sure that I was living in the very community that unfortunately is most often touched by the police and by the prosecutor's office.
Okay, wow, that's amazing. One thing I'm curious about is kind of your upbringing. I know your dad was in the military.
Yep.
So are you a military brat?
No, I am not a military brat. But I am the proud daughter of my parents who have been married for 50 years. Wow. So my dad is 2nd generation Irish American, Vietnam War veteran, was a Navy corpsman. And all of the men on my father's side of the family have served this country. My dad enlisted. He was not drafted. So he walked on his own volition to sign up to fight for this country. And even though we don't agree on everything, our politics are very different sometimes. I respect and love him not only as my father, but as a person who has fought for my ability to have the opinions that I have. So that's my dad. He met my mom, who is first generation West Indian. Both of her parents are from Barbados. And they fell in love, and Boston was a very different place back in 1968, 69, and 70. My father's family disowned him when he married or fell in love with my mom, and they came around like most people were happy to say do. But there were lots of tensions in their relationship in the beginning, because being in a biracial or multicultural relationship isn't as sort of posh as it is right now. It certainly wasn't back then in late 69. So my background is I'm the oldest of 5. I have an amazing multicultural family. Like most families, we're really complicated. And what I think makes me unique as the DA, even though I'm a prosecutor and the chief law enforcement officer, I have siblings that have cycled in and out of the criminal justice system at the local, state, and federal level. I have personally experienced what it is like to be a loved one of somebody who's incarcerated. I have visited our jails and our prisons as a district attorney, as a assistant United States attorney, as a criminal defense attorney, and also as the sibling of somebody who I was visiting. And you are treated very differently depending on which hat you have on when you walk through those doors. Even your access is different.
So when you visited as a family member, this is prior to becoming a lawyer.
Yep. It was prior to becoming a lawyer sometimes. And then I am the oldest of 5, and 3 of my siblings have either struggled with mental health issues, substance use disorder, or incarceration in and out of state, local, and federal or district carceral facilities. And so I visited many of our state facilities, so MCI Concord, for example, and others, to see loved ones of mine. And the experience is very different, right? Like anyone who's visited, I've had to, collect phone calls from loved ones, right? Or wait when your phone rings and you have to, go through the entire rigmarole of push 1 to accept and the call being recorded, and recognizing how hard my brothers had to work in order to make that phone call, right? The work and the pay that you receive while you are incarcerated is slave wages, essentially, right? And you are doing hard work. When we see across the country, Celeste, when there were these fires in California and they had prisoners that were putting out those fires, those prisoners that were saving people's lives in California, when they are released from prison, can't be firefighters because they're felons. They're precluded, but we can use them, of course, to save our lives when they're prisoners to do this. So it's unacceptable. My brother once, when he was working for a livery company as an incarcerated individual, being paid essentially pennies on the dollar. But when he gets out and goes to apply for that job as a free man, but a convicted felon, they would say no, because your record precludes you from doing so. So we really need to shine a light deeply on the inconsistencies and the hypocrisies that we see in the system. It's a big deal.
When you decided to run for district attorney in Suffolk County, before that, you had a pretty decent job where you didn't have as much pushback, negativity in your face.
Oh, those were the good old days. Yeah, I had
Why did you change?
Why? Well, you know why? Because I was really sick of a system, right? I'm in a little bit of a beef right now that happened earlier today or yesterday about something where, I didn't get in this job to make friends. I got in this job to make change. And I think there are a lot of people, and I'm one of them, that look at the district attorney's office and say, you have a lot of work to do. You don't represent the community that you prosecute, and you are here to serve, just like police departments. I will say they're getting better in Boston, but Certainly 10 years ago, they didn't represent the communities that they were there to protect and serve. They didn't speak the languages of the individuals that lived in those communities. They had never lived in those communities. They only worked there, and then they drove back out to their houses in North Reading or wherever they lived to then swoop in and police these poor and Black and brown communities. I have no problem shining the light on the office that I ran and am elected to run, but I also shine the light on the public defenders, right? Who we often think of the good guys are the public defenders and the bad guys are the prosecutors. There's not any diversity in the public defender's office either, right? Of the majority of the people that are representing my family, when my family makes a mistake and they're indigent, they can't afford private counsel. Many of the lawyers that my siblings have had, none of them have been people of color. We are begging for them to return our phone calls. The entire system has to be better. We need to pay public defenders more money. We need to pay prosecutors a little bit more money because they are working incredibly hard in a system. But I'm not going to just only shine the light on my office. Our judiciary, the judges in our system, do you know that there are over 80 Superior Court judges in all of Massachusetts, and only 3 of them are Black? And what I can tell you, Celeste, is I defy you to walk into a Superior Court when they open again, because all of them are pretty much closed now with COVID-19, and just take a random data on a sheet of paper of what the races are of the defendants that are shackled and coming in from the back of the courtroom. I can assure you it is not 95% white. The criminal defense, the criminal defendants that are walking out there or walking in on their own volition if they got bail and they were able to walk in and be free prior to their trial. We don't have representation on the bench. We don't have representation enough in the DA's office. I'm working hard to change that, but we don't also have representation in the criminal defense bar. And we have a lot of criminal defense attorneys, just like a lot of prosecutors, that need to look in the mirror and own the fact that they don't represent the community that they serve, that we need to be far more culturally competent. We need more people that speak different languages, and we need more people from these communities to represent those communities when they get in trouble or they need our help.
What does it look like on your end? Because you're fighting different fronts or you're advocating for different fronts.
Yeah.
What does it look like on your end?
So I have, I took over an office that I had never worked in before. And I felt like an outsider when I ran for office because a lot of what I stood for was I want to change the way this office works. But I think no one likes being told the truth, number one, or having a light shined upon them. So I had to work really hard to recognize, I took over an office that basically, to me, Celeste, it was us versus them, right? And I have to realize I'm a them right now. I'm the DA of this office that I was fighting to take leadership of so I could change the culture. But, what I'm really sort of dismayed about is I think there's still a lot of stuff happening in the criminal justice system. And that's a lot of actors, the police, the criminal defense bar, the prosecutorial bar, the DAs, that lots of people are talking, and the individuals that have been incarcerated or have touched the system in a negative way, they don't have a seat at the table. It's either their criminal defense lawyers speaking for them to say, be quiet over there. I'll speak on your behalf. I know what your problems are like because I represented you. But here's the problem. If you only ever see a community as criminal defendants, if that's what your view is of Black people, because you live in a different community elsewhere, the same thing I say to my prosecutors, the same thing I say to myself. I look at Black people as a Black person myself, and I don't ever assume you're a criminal because you could be the mother of a track child that runs track with my daughter. We could go to church together. We could have gone to school together. When you are multicultural and you have tons of different friends from tons of different backgrounds, you don't have as much, I would say, implicit bias, even though we all have implicit bias, myself included.
What does your change looks like? I know when you ran for office, there was a lot of different things that you suggested that you got a lot of pushback on, and you're
Yeah.
still trying to make that happen. So tell me a little bit about what that looks like.
So basically, Celeste, I ran on the premise that everyone's entitled to respect and dignity, period.
Mhm.
Whether you are the family member, and I'm the family member of several criminal defendants. That's not all they are, by the way. They are much more than just that snapshot
Yep.
picture of their life. They are not just convicted felons. They are full mosaics of people. But I have seen a system where the family of defendants are vilified as though they themselves have committed a crime, right?
Mhm.
And the system works for them too, right? Our tax dollars pay to have our courthouses work, to pay our DA's salary, to pay our public defender salary, all of that stuff. And we need to make sure, and this is the law enforcement part. I'm not talking about the criminal defense bar. Law
Mhm.
enforcement needs to recognize that today's victim is potentially tomorrow's defendant, and tomorrow's defendant is possibly yesterday or the next day's victim, right?
Yeah.
And we've seen a lot of people, Celeste, I've only been the DA for 16 months. I have already seen people that were the victims of gun violence and then also perpetrated a gun crime, right? So
Mhm.
they are the victim in one case and the defendant in another case, right?
Mhm.
If we treat you terribly as a defendant, how do we think you're going to react when you're a witness to a crime or the victim of a crime? And then we say like, hey, Celeste, how are you doing? Are things going okay? But when you were a defendant, we treated you like trash, right?
Right.
We
Right.
treated your family like trash. So look at my family even as a great example. If the FBI knocked on my parents' door today to arrest one of my siblings, and unfortunately that is something that has happened in the past, and
Mhm.
they treated my parents disrespectfully and said, awful things to them about their children and how they had failed as parents, etc. They have no idea that one of their daughters is the DA of Suffolk County. The son they're looking for is accused of committing that crime and very well may have done it. One of their other children is the executive director of the Red Sox Foundation. And they have two other children that are doing other things. Families are complicated. When we kick down doors in Roxbury and Dorchester, we don't know if the individual that we're pulling out of that house, if their uncle is the pastor of the biggest church, Morning Star Church
Mhm.
or Jubilee. We
Mhm.
don't know who their relatives are,
Mhm.
but we have to treat everyone, irrespective of what they are alleged to have done, with respect and dignity, even if they haven't treated the victim of the crime that way. We are the government. We are held to a higher standard. We must.
No, that's good. And with everything going on with COVID now, the court systems are closed. I'm curious about what your office looks like with the jail system. I know you've been trying to stop some people from going to jail for some shoplifting. I think you said you wanted the third offense. What does that look like now with the court
So
systems closed?
here is one astounding side effect of COVID-19. So when I ran for office, it was dignity and respect for everyone.
Mhm.
We are no longer going to criminalize poverty,
Mhm.
mental health issues, and
Mhm.
substance use disorder, which we do every day, right?
Mhm.
Bail is just, will you come back? It is not, it shouldn't be, Celeste, if you and I both get arrested for trespass, first of all, there shouldn't be a bail, but let's say there is a $500 bail. Celeste, if you're rich and you make a call and somebody brings that 500 and hands it in, you are walking out the door and going home that day. If I don't have $500, I'm on my way to Nashua Street Jail. And all that is penalizing poverty, right? So the other thing I did was I said, you know what? And this is after meeting with lots of criminal defense lawyers. I came up with a list, they helped me, of about 15 types of crimes that are clogging up our lowest court systems, our municipal and district courts. I'm not talking about murder and rape and kidnapping. I'm talking about operating on a suspended license. I'm talking about trespass. I'm talking about addiction, just possession of a drug You're not out here trafficking and moving weight like you're, Stringer Bell or, Avon Barksdale from The Wire, right? We're just talking about somebody who unfortunately has heroin, a small amount, and they are, they have an addiction. They have a substance use disorder. I want to try to get them treatment rather than send them to jail, right? And there were lots of people that were supportive, but there were many, many people that were not supportive. And what we're seeing with COVID-19 now is lots of people are coming on board because the police have now said we are going to issue summonses instead of arresting people for low-level crime. So because they don't want to get COVID-19. They only are going to the most violent and serious situations, and they are only arresting in the serious matters. They are summonsing and ticketing people in the non-serious, non-violent crimes, and saying when the courts open in 3 or 4 months, show up and we can hold you accountable then, right? But so that is a positive impact or outcome from COVID-19, because they are sifting through and saying, we only want to focus on the violent, serious crimes, which is what I've been asking them to do even before COVID-19.
I know.
Right?
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
One last thing I wanted to ask you, but I feel like you probably answered it earlier. I wanted to ask you where you got your courage from, but I think about your parents and their journey together over the last 50 years. Is that a big part of
that is outstanding. I mean, they are amazing. And they are, the odd couple, but they are still happily married, and they're 72 years old. They actually came by to visit me today because my mom is West Indian and brought me 400 oranges and lemons and more lettuce than I could ever eat with, because she thinks that, believe me, and I don't, but it's all healthy, right? And ginger and, all this other stuff. She made me coconut bread though, which I'm really excited about. But they're lovely people. And you know what? They are conservative leaning, right? They are conservative leaning, and we don't agree on everything politically, but I ask their opinion, and they are capable of showing me a different viewpoint than what it is that that sometimes I look at matters and believe I know right away what is right and wrong. But it's really important for us to not get our blinders on and to hear other people's opinions about what's happening. They've been through a lot together, incarceration and jail and prison don't just impact. Of course, the person that's impacted the most in that situation is the victim of the crime, who has to live with that harm that has been inflicted upon them, but also the individual that is sentenced. Jail is not a positive place, right? But it's not just the individual that goes there, it's the whole family that is impacted. But we can't forget that there's a victim that's impacted too, right? There's a person when a rape happens that, I like to say rape is murder and the person lived, right? Something has been ripped and stolen from you. It is the most intimate of a violation and a theft, right? And so, and murder as well. We just had 2 incidents. April 15th, Alyssa King, a beautiful young person, 17 years old, was murdered on Topliff Street. And then, but 3 days later, April 18th, a 10-year-old girl was in her apartment, minding her own business in her bathroom. And unbeknownst to her, there was a very large gathering of about 50 people in an apartment next door. And somebody who was brandishing a firearm in a bathroom mirror, I think maybe, accidentally discharged that gun. It went through several walls and hit that young girl in the back. And, I'm happy to say she is alive. She has been released from the hospital. I wrote her a note today, and we got her some amazing markers and notepads so that she can do some coloring and other things. But there's a 10-year-old girl who is a gunshot victim, right? It was the Saturday of school vacation week that it happened. She should have been getting ready for an exciting, albeit, different because we're all in our houses now and it's not school vacation and that you can go out and play, but she didn't have any Zooms coming up for school that week. She should have been looking forward to a fun week of TV and snacks and other things. And instead she's recovering from a gunshot wound, right? So we have victims that are impacted, as well as defendants, right? Who many of those individuals that harm have been harmed, right? And trauma is real. And remember, Celeste, we don't get to choose who we're born to. We don't get to choose where we live as a child. We don't get to choose. When we look, Celeste, at what's happening in Chelsea now, Chelsea, out of all of the states and cities and towns in our Commonwealth, is the number one place of the highest positives of COVID-19. And what we have to look at is Chelsea is 67% Latinx. Really huge immigrant population. They have tons of environmental toxins, right? The Tobin Bridge goes right through Chelsea. Logan Airport has planes flying right through Chelsea. It has one of the largest food distribution centers smack dab in the middle of it in all of New England. So those are trucks driving in and out of Chelsea. All of that is emissions and toxins that are pumped into that community. So young people are born with asthma and COPD. These are all impacts of environmental racism, which is real. Failing school systems. I don't want to be negatron, today, but there are lots of systems that are set up so that poor people and Black and brown people fail. And what we need is bold leadership to speak up and say, no, we are not going to allow this to happen. So when we see with COVID-19, remember there was all this in the news about we don't have enough ventilators, so we're going to come up with some criteria about who's eligible for ventilators. And they looked at what are called comorbidity factors, meaning, are you obese? Do you have asthma or COPD? Do you have all these underlying ailments that might make you more susceptible to the disease or not be able to have your body fight off this virus and win and live? So the disabled community is terrified now that they're going to be written off as expendable, right? And so we need advocates to be loud about these disparities and this discrimination that's happening.
The one thing I want you to help just kind of share some words of encouragement for my guests, for somebody like you who has kind of fought your way up and continues to fight and continues to work hard for your community, my community. Any encouraging words you can give to people right now that are sitting here watching you or listening to you now?
We are going to get through this. I know it seems like it's never ending. We are going to. And my hope is that people are finally recognizing what people of color and poor people have recognized every single day, that the real frontline workers and heroes are the people that work in our supermarkets, the people that pick up our trash, the people that watch our children, the people that clean up our buildings. They are the ones that work in restaurants, that drive our public transportation. All of these blue collar workers that so many uppity elite people look down on or think are invisible are the ones that are keeping us alive right now. And it's not just enough to say, oh my God, thank you. What we have to do at the end of this is demand a living wage so that the minimum wage is $15 an hour at least, so that people have full-blown health care, that people can take paid time off. Because remember, Celeste, you and I are Zooming right now and talking. Telecommuting into work is a privilege. You don't get to Zoom into your job as a cashier at Market Basket or Whole Foods or Stop and Shop or, Brothers Market, right? You don't get to do that. You have to show up and put a mask on and put your life at risk to make sure that other people can live, right? And can eat every day. So my hope is that we recognize how important our teachers are. I don't know, Celeste, if you have children. I have a 16-year-old daughter who I was like, I'm going to expel you from school and my home, right? Nobody listens to me. I have an 11-year-old niece who's in 5th grade and a 7-year-old niece who's in 1st grade. And I'm like, I'm not built for this, right? Like, who has time to be teaching. So we need to give a hug to these damn teachers and say thank you for all the work that they do, and the school therapists and the school nurses, because they are parenting our children for 8 damn hours a day when we're off trying to help raise our family as well by going to work and making our money. So my hope is we are exposing all of the amazing people that have kept us alive and together in this global pandemic. But we can't forget at the end, because Celeste, Black people and Latinx people are dying at 3 and 4 times the rate as our white counterparts. We aren't getting ventilators. We're being turned away from hospitals. And it's not okay to say, oops, sorry, when somebody's lost their life or come inches from losing their life. So we need bold leadership right now. I don't care if people are mad at me. I'm going to speak truth to power all the time, because that's who I was raised to be.
Thank you. I really appreciate you coming on to share your insight. You are amazing. I know you're going to inspire so many people that are listening to this, but I'm beyond grateful to you for making time to come on.
Awesome. Well, keep up the good work, Celeste. And I've heard really good things about you and lots of really good people on the show. Keep educating us. You are part of the solution. Okay.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Be safe.
Bye. Yeah, that was good. So grateful to her for coming on and sharing everything that she's doing. She's doing a lot. I don't know how she does it, but she does. And I'm just grateful to have people like her that are on the front lines and fighting for equity, and it's amazing. So thank you guys so much. If you just came in here and you want to catch the replay, you can always catch it on the podcast. Hey, Janice, thank you. You can also catch it on the podcast. Thank you. Celeste the Therapist podcast. You can find it on all podcasting platforms. And you heard what Rachael Rollins said at the end, is we're going to get through this. And I do believe we are. I think that like hearing from her and all the other amazing people that I bring on give us these words of encouragement, it helps us get a little bit of hope. So if you feel like you tend to be losing hope, hold on to the fact that like there are people that are fighting for us and doing the work. So I'll be on Monday. We'll be on with a new episode next week, Monday through Friday. You can catch me 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, talking to somebody else who's doing things to empower other people. You can follow me on all social media platforms. All you got to do is search Celeste the Therapist. And until next time, guys, I'll talk to you later.
Every laugh, every smile, every hug, every kiss, every touch, every person in my life that I care about and love. But wait, maybe I'm getting too emotional. That's exactly what they say you ain't supposed to do. Suppress your feelings, never talk about your pain. So this a moment of clarity. And make sure you always protect your energy. You stay focused.